And on issue number one, you mentioned Donald Trump going down to Georgia today. Take a look at Trump's advantage on the economy. 50% of likely voters say they trust him to handle the economy more than Harris. Only 39% of likely voters say so of Harris, again, on issue number one.
I mean, it is really stunning if you think about these numbers. 20% more of voters say that they are worried about the economy, and that's their number one issue more than anybody else. And look at his lead on this.
And on issue number one, you mentioned Donald Trump going down to Georgia today.
Trump or Kamala? Trump. I don't know. Trump or Kamala? Trump or Kamala? Trump.
Definitely Trump. Donald Trump.
Trump or Kamala? Trump or Kamala?
Kamala, yeah.
Trump or Kamala?
Oh, Trump.
You.
Trump.
Trump or Kamala?
Nope.
Trump or Kamala?
I'm gonna have to go with Trump, brother.
I don't know.
Trump or Kamala?
Oh, absolutely Trump.
Trump or Kamala?
Trump.
Trump or Kamala?
I don't even know who Kamala is.
Electra Janis is the vice chair of the Washington County Board of Commissioners. A 28-year-old Republican voting for Trump, she thinks that Trump can keep the gains he made with younger voters when Biden was still in the race.
I will say when I'm voting for President Trump, I'm not voting for a person. I'm voting for his policies.
Breaking this morning, new polls with good news for Donald Trump in key battleground states as Vice President Harris unveils a new aggressive plan for the week. The closest election we have ever seen. That is what this one is, at least right now. Brand new polling this morning shows Donald Trump narrowly ahead in three critical battleground states, Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina. This after polls last week that showed the opposite. Harris narrowly ahead in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. The new polling from the New York Times and Siena College shows that Trump has a 5-point lead in Arizona. In Georgia and North Carolina, it is within the margin of error.
One of the things that we should note, and I don't know if we can show this number, I want to put this up on screen. Latino voters have moved away from Harris in Arizona. If you believe this New York Times poll, her lead has shrunk by 11 points in that voting bloc. She was at 60% in August, now 49%.
So look at Donald Trump's electoral vote total right now, if the polls are exactly right, 262. But let's say the polls are off like they were back in 2020. Look where he goes. He goes to 312. Why is that? Because the polls underestimated Donald Trump in 2020. So the bottom line is, instead of losing those Great Lake battleground states, he wins all of them. He obviously holds on to North Carolina, Georgia, and Arizona, and he gains Nevada. So if the polls are as good as they were in 2020, despite the fact that at this particular hour Donald Trump trails in enough states to give Kamala Harris the victory, if the polls are off like they were in 2020, Donald Trump would actually win the election.
Every time I see this lady, hands behind your back. Come on, Patriots, y'all know we got to say it. And every time we see that lady, man, hands behind her back. And there's a lot of them that need to be held accountable.
Do you think she needs to be presenting more meat on the bones of, I get that she's from a middle-class family. It's great. And I get that she feels people.
Bro, did Tapper just say that live on air? Did Tapper just really say, I told y'all after the last couple takes he had of just being like, he was like, is she ever gonna, is she gonna speak to the press? Is she gonna do more interviews? I feel like that was the breaking point for him. And he just said this live on air to box wine Nancy Pelosi in her face. I get that she's from a middle class family. We've heard it every single day now. The same repeated answer, the same word salads.
Bones of, I get that she's from a middle-class family. It's great. And I get that she feels people's pains. Great. But what about, like, here are the 5 things I'm going to do directly for you? Does she need to be doing more of that?
Well, she'll be doing some of that tomorrow once she'll put forth her economic plan. But people like to have a connection to whoever is running for office, that they share their experience, that they understand their lives. And I think that's what she is establishing. But I never give advice to presidential candidates. The wisdom that they have, the political astuteness that they have to become the presidential candidate says they know something about the market out there. But I do think that the one issue in terms of the cost of living, people want to hear something very specific. She is saying that in that ad, but also tomorrow in her economic plan. I have no complaint about how she is going forward.
Channel's wholly focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Okay, so today I've decided is election analysis day. It's been too long since we've taken a look at the polls, and obviously there's a reason why I haven't done a polling video in a while. That's because the polling numbers, as you might have expected, or you might have seen, just continue to blindly move towards Kamala Harris no matter what happens. An attempted assassination on President Trump, Kamala gets a bump. Kamala does horrible during the debate. Kamala gets a bump. Kamala does another trash interview, followed by multiple horrible word salad public events, and she goes up in the polls. No matter what happens, all the push polls seem to think Kamala Harris is doing so good, but slowly over time I keep collecting little tidbits of data that might be telling a very different story. Of course, the Democrats want to focus on the RCP average, which is, I think, sitting at 2.2 right now. Not exactly something to celebrate if you're a Democrat, but, you know, better than being behind 4 points like Joe Biden was. And so Democrats just want to keep focusing on polls that are predicting the national popular vote, but I want to focus on key issues, the most important states and the most important demographics. So let's see if we could find anything. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. All right, firstly, I want to start off with the issues. So supposedly Kamala Harris right now is delivering a convincing message. You know, essentially what an election is voting for a remedy, or at least a perceived remedy. The question is, who's going to solve my problems? Who's going to be better on important issues to me, Kamala or Trump? And then people cast their ballots. Kamala's had the last 2 months to try to convince the American people that she's got a plan and her plan is better for you. Now, of course, the next logical question, is it working? Well, it doesn't seem like that's the case at all. Here's an NBC poll of 1,000 registered voters. So registered voters, not likely voters, and an NBC poll. Not exactly the most trustworthy source, at least in terms of the top end numbers. But anyways, nationally, they found Kamala Harris is leading by 5. That should supposedly be devastating, right? Well, no, not exactly, because on the actual issues, Trump leads. When it comes to securing the border, Trump's ahead almost 20 points. Or actually, he's ahead 21 points. On the economy, he's ahead 9 points. Now, that is totally unbelievable, but even in an NBC push poll, he's...
Just be honest with y'all, man. I don't see how she makes it past 150. And that's why I told y'all, forget all these polls. And a lot of polls show that Trump is up now. As of, September the 24th, a lot of polls are showing that Trump is skyrocketing right now, This video was done on the 3rd or the 2nd, but right now, as I'm recording, this was on September the 22nd, so this is 48 hours ago. But right now, it's showing completely opposite of what was showing 2 days ago. It's up, it's back and forth, but again, I don't see how any of these are close. And again, y'all, but this is why I tell you, it has to be too big to rig, man. It cannot be close. It cannot be close, man. She's ducked and dodged and hid this whole campaign. We still don't understand what she stands. We don't. Can't give us an answer on the biggest questions. Word salads, repeats the exact same thing. I don't know how she has this much support, y'all. But again, I told y'all, the media built a candidate, played in people's faces. Not one single vote. Worst approval rating. Most unpopular. Terrible behind Joe Biden. And then we let the media just skyrocket her. We're going to run on identity politics, joy, pride, hope. A new way forward once again. Trump's the bad man. He needs to go to jail. You come after your political opponent. Sham trials. Sham debates. They have wiped Trump through the mud. Nothing but lies, more brainwashing. Project 2025. Dictator on day one. He's a racist. He's Hitler. He's a threat to our sweet apple pie democracy. Constitutional republic. But you see, a lot of people are waking up, man. And I think they're in for a rude of awakening, and it's going to be too big to rig, man. Can't trust these polls. I'll just be real with y'all. I know we have to show y'all. We have to show everybody what's going on. But I'm just being real with y'all, man. Being real.
He's ahead, and on the issue of crime, he's ahead, even though they're trying to sell her as a tough-on-crime prosecutor. Yeah, real tough-on-crime.
Right now, what we're seeing in America is many cities spend over 1/3 of their entire city budget on policing. But meanwhile, we've been defunding public schools for years in America. We've got to re-examine what we're doing with American taxpayer dollars and ask the question, are we getting the right return on our investment? Are we actually creating healthy and safe communities? Here's the thing. Defund the police.
Defund the police.
The issue behind it is that we need to reimagine how we are creating safety. And when you have many cities that have 1/3 of their entire city budget focused on policing, we know that is not the smart way and the best way or the right way to achieve safety. For too long, the status quo thinking has been you get more safety by putting more cops on the street. Well, that's wrong. I've been a leader in the United States Senate on what we need to do to get rid of the cash bail system in America. And why? Because I know the system from the inside. And I know that when we are talking about the issue of bail, the fact is that there are people sitting in jail every day in America for days, weeks, months, even years, waiting to go to trial simply because they can't afford to pay the money to bail out.
And these numbers right here are really important. The number one issue in this election is the economy. And on that issue, Kamala Harris is failing. She failed to answer basic questions. It seems more like she doesn't even really want to address it. At one point, she didn't even answer the question whether people are better off today than they were during Trump's 4 years. They're avoiding the issue. Meanwhile, the Trump campaign is addressing the issue.
Eggs, when Kamala Harris took office, were short of $1.50 a dozen. Now a dozen eggs will cost you around $4 thanks to Kamala Harris's inflationary policies. Pennsylvania actually has seen some of the worst grocery price increases of the entire nation, and again, it's because she cast the deciding vote on the Inflation Explosion Act. I think we want Pennsylvanians to be able to afford groceries. We want our young families to be able to buy food at a reasonable price at the grocery store, and the only way to do that is to get back to common sense economic policies and fire Kamala Harris. This is a person who's presided over $1,000 increase in monthly expenses just to afford the same life you could have afforded 3.5 years ago. It costs you over $1,000 a month here in Pennsylvania. We can do so much better. We certainly will. And as the father of a couple of kids who eat a whole lot, we certainly need to do better for the next generation. God bless you guys.
It seems dumb, but it's not. The cost of eggs are important here, because that right there is the track record of Bidenomics or Kamalanomics. And that right there, that simple fact that eggs and other products cost so much more since before Kamala took over, that's something that's got to be addressed, but the Kamala campaign doesn't want to have that conversation. That's a bad look. It's been years of this inflation crisis. They caused the inflation, and they still refuse to acknowledge the cause of inflation. Kamala Harris claims that it's Russia's fault. It's climate change's fault. It's actually Donald Trump's fault somehow. But everybody knows inflation can only be created truthfully by two things. Yes, an increase in gas cost, but more importantly, and more significant, I'd argue, is money printing, government money printing. How do you create inflation? You increase money supply. You spend all kinds of money that the country doesn't actually have. You stimulate the economy to the tune of trillions of dollars, and then all of a sudden everything costs more because there's more money circulating. I know, brain implosion moment. You know, Kamala is trying to win on reducing inflation, keeping the economy in check, but she refuses to address the economy, and she refuses to even accept the basic realities of inflation. It's insane, and she's losing on these issues, and so how's she supposed to win the election? You know, again, the polls are saying one thing, and you know, the polls have always been like this ahead of an election, except for the Joe Biden-Trump rematch, but the actual deeper data is saying something else. You know, supposedly Kamala Harris is making these gains over the last couple of weeks, but according to the latest Gallup poll, the exact opposite is happening. According to Gallup poll's latest favorability ratings, and here's a shift from August, Donald Trump's favorability shot up 5 points, meanwhile Kamala Harris is down 3. Then we've got this from Pew Research. In their newest polls, surveying party ID with leaners, well, just take a look. Back during the 2020 election, leaners were favoring Democrats at 51 to 46%. Well, now it's flipped on its head, a 9-point shift, as the GOP now dominates at 50% and the Dems are at 46. And that right there is important because, yes, the current polling data is showing that Kamala Harris is doing so great, but there's one thing a lot of people are not talking about. Sure, Kamala Harris has raised the floor that, Joe Biden was struggling with, but there's still a whole lot of undecided voters. We've got this poll from Data Orbital showing they found nearly 8% of the people they surveyed were undecided. Well, what do you think that means? When those people decide, and if, especially in these swing states, independents, leaners, undecided voters, if they're moving towards the Republican Party, they're moving towards Donald Trump, well then that tells you possibly, when it comes down to actually voting on the day, it's possible we see a lot of people vote for Trump who aren't currently represented in the polls, otherwise known as the secret Trump voter or the Trump leaner. And again, that's something I really want to focus on. Supposedly Kamala Harris made all of these gains, but we've analyzed the crosstabs. She's not really doing better than Joe Biden with any particular voter group, except for maybe women, but then there's the counteracting effect where men are more likely to vote against Kamala Harris, so it's kind of like a neutral transaction. She hasn't made significant gains in the voting groups that she needs to. Meanwhile, all we keep seeing is how independents are tracking towards Trump. Black men are still moving towards Trump in the same manner, men in general, but really I think the most important thing is independents. We've been covering how since after the debate, independents have been tracking perfectly with Republicans. During real-time debate data, post-debate analysis, that's what we've found. Most independents, in some cases breaking at a 2-to-1 ratio, are leaning towards Trump. I mean, look at this poll. Trump surges 14 points with independents, and Latinos shift 19 points in ex-president's favor. Former President Donald Trump looks to have made massive gains over Vice President Kamala Harris, gaining roughly 14 points among independents and 19 points among Latino voters. According to new polling from NPR/PBS, Trump has surpassed Kamala Harris by 3 points among independents in a multi-candidate race, 49 to 46%. This represents a considerable increase since August, when Trump trailed Harris by 11 points at 48 to 37%. I'm kind of in this situation where I don't know what to believe anymore. You have an NPR Marist poll that shows Kamala Harris winning, while at the same time showing huge shifts in support for Donald Trump among some of the most key voting demographics. I don't know, make it make sense. That's all I'm asking for. Make it make sense. Because as of right now, it makes no sense. You got all these polls showing Kamala up by all these points, while at the same time, you got some of the most trustworthy pollsters with the lowest margins of error, like Atlas Intel and Rasmussen Reports, showing no considerable change. Trump is still ahead, according to their data, nationally. And on the swing state front, again with some of the best pollsters, it's just not looking good. The latest Emerson poll is brutal for Kamala Harris. Supposedly Trump's up +1 in Wisconsin, up 1 in Pennsylvania. Insider Advantage, another great poll, showed him up +2, up in Georgia by 3. He just seems to be tracking well. And I think despite all the hype, despite the headlines, secretly people understand this. I think there's a reason why Kamala Harris is asking for a second debate. Even though she refused to participate in the Fox News debate that was proposed for this month, she wants a last-minute presidential debate on October 23rd. Of course, with CNN and Caitlin Collins. October 23rd! What? After so many people have probably casted their early ballots, right ahead of Election Day? That is unprecedented and insane. But of course, Kamala Harris wants another rigged debate. Their strategy has been hide her the entire time. Avoid debate, avoid discussion, avoid interviews. Avoid scrutiny in general, even the lightest form of scrutiny. But now she wants to debate all of a sudden? Yeah, I'm sorry, that's desperation. Again, I think people know that Trump is actually tracking well, and these pollsters and networks are trying hard to hide that fact from the people. But of course, I could be completely wrong. Anyways, that's what I got for you.
Yeah. I just don't see it, y'all. I'm telling you, I believe it's going to be too big to rig, man. They're in for a huge awakening come November 5th, man. But we encourage you guys to go out and vote. I love y'all, and I will catch you beautiful people in the next one, man. Y'all comment down below what y'all think.